What's up, everybody? This is episode 10 of The PlayStation Effect, a weekly podcast that discusses the past, present, and future of PlayStation. I'm your host, Marco, and normally joining me would be my good friend, co-host Pablo, but he couldn't be here. Unfortunately, he's doing motion capture for a sex scene in the next God of War. Let's just say the other side of that Leviathan axe is giving him the business. So, yeah, I mean, shout out to Pablo out there getting his pussy ate. But you know what? This week we're going to keep the ball rolling. I'm going to keep it entertaining. So don't bounce off the show just because it's me. I can make it entertaining. It's just me, oos. But I gotcha. This week we're going to be talking about Saros, of course, and whether Housemarque's latest game is overrated or fairly rated. And then after that, we'll talk about Xbox CEO Asha Sharma's new We Are Xbox movement and what it means for the PlayStation ecosystem. And apparently, we know that the Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 project is further along than we thought. So if that's the case, then what does Square-Enix need to do to make sure that that finale sticks the landing? We'll talk about all of that and then some right here on the PlayStation Effect. This is a brand new show, for those of you who don't know. Me and Pablo do this every Tuesday, and we really take pride in delivering a PlayStation podcast that doesn't shill, doesn't beg you to subscribe to Patreon, doesn't bog you down with sponsored ads. So rest assured, this podcast is 100% not brought to you by Blue Chew. Not brought to you by BetterHelp. Not brought to you by Prize Picks, okay? Because you shouldn't have to come to a PlayStation podcast and be asked to fucking gamble. You know what I'm saying? So look, I mean, we might be a small PlayStation podcast out here, but we're also not sellouts. We're PlayStation fans, and all we want to do is make the show about being PlayStation fans. So no monetization schemes, no side hustles. This is not a podcast that stops a good conversation to tell you about HelloFresh. It's just a show about PlayStation's past, present, and future by two grown dudes who like video games. And so if you like what that stands for, subscribe to the show. Not only for the fun PlayStation content, but also just to show the algorithm out there that we really want to support podcasts that are not trying to nickel and dime us or trying to hoodwink us with this side hustle practice where you're really just in it for the money and not really for the love of gaming, because that's not who we are. So with that being said, let's go ahead and dive into the first topic this week, and we're going to talk about Saros. A game that's definitely the critical darling of the industry right now, and a game that many PlayStation fans out there, possibly including you, are really enjoying. But I do see some conversation starting to brew now that the game is in the wild. And a lot of people are asking, is this game fairly rated or maybe possibly a little overrated? And so, really fascinating topic. I definitely see where some of the criticisms are coming from with Saros, particularly around the fact that it's more or less a spiritual successor to Returnal and therefore not this new, fresh feeling experience. And so that can definitely pull down some of the excitement that some people had. But I thought the best way to do this was to just go ahead and get the game myself. Now, full disclosure, I was what you'd call a Saros skeptic, in that I did play Returnal, and for what I got out of Returnal, I can definitely see the quality that came from that game. Movement, action, combat, shooting is all absolutely sublime. I just couldn't beat the game. I just couldn't do it. I'm one of those guys who was stuck at biome number 1. I just couldn't get the job done. I couldn't do it. And, and that's just because I'm not a super hardcore type of player. I'm really not big into roguelikes either, so the loop of starting over from square one every run just wasn't super compelling to me, and without some type of meaningful progression system to make me feel like I'm actively getting better or have a better chance at succeeding with the game through various upgrades and unlocks, I found myself hitting a wall with Returnal pretty early. And based on the completion percentage of that game, it wasn't just me. So there were plenty of other people out there who were, maybe admiring the game for what it was, but just couldn't connect with it as well as other people could. So here comes Saros basically doing the same formula, but with a little bit more approachability. And needless to say, it got me pretty interested. But at the same time, it also made me worry a little bit because you never really know until you get your hands on the game and see it for yourself. You can hear that it's more approachable. You can hear that it's got different options and toggles that can help casual players kind of progress through the game a little bit easier than the hardcore. And that's great. But how you see it in execution, in practice, is a different story. So to make a long story less long, I decided to go ahead and take a chance and get it. And the goal was, let me see if this game is overrated or fairly rated. Let me see if it's a real Game of the Year contender or a pretender. And so I've put in about, I want to say close to 5 hours into the game so far. So a pretty decent chunk. And I will say that there are definitely some things that I think stand out compared to Returnal and just as its own entity. But I think the first thing to probably address are the similarities and differences to Returnal. And what I will say off rip is that the onboarding experience in this game is way better done than I think Returnal was. Returnal just kind of lets you figure things out on your own for the most part, and really leans on that early disorientation to make you feel anxious, to make you feel nervous of turning every corner. And some of that is deliberate by design, but you also have to be a video game that kind of explains your systems and mechanics to people. And I think that Saros does a really good job of setting the table for you. It tells you kind of what you're trying to do early from a narrative standpoint, which is really helpful. More on the story in a second. And it also gives you a very clear step-by-step understanding of exactly what you need to be working towards from a point A to point B standpoint and with just how things work. And I really appreciated that because it made me feel more at ease and more comfortable instead of that weird, disorienting, kind of anxious feeling. I kind of came into the first few hours with a lot more confidence that helped me move through the game with a bit more open-mindedness and just a willingness to kind of take in some of the mechanics and systems and really figure out how to, for lack of a better term, get good. To that point, the difficulty, I think, is another big point of differential for this game compared to Returnal. I do find it to be challenging, but I do think that the first biome in particular does a really good job of getting you ready. And what I mean by that is it's not necessarily throwing the kitchen sink at you, but it does kind of get you ready to move through the game's overall gameplay loop with more confidence and just knowing how the ebb and flow of the game tends to be. And I think in that regard, it's largely successful. I really enjoyed the first biome a lot. I did struggle in certain points, but it was almost just kind of me getting acclimated to not only the control scheme, but also the weapons, the enemy patterns, that kind of thing. So I thought it did really well there. And so after a couple of tries, I was actually able to beat the first biome's boss. And, naturally, I'm kind of feeling myself. And at that point, I was already working through the progression system, which I think is another big plus and a big difference compared to Returnal, where those improvements that you can make to your character feel very meaningful. Everything from giving yourself more max health to more power and everything in between. I think it just gives you a lot more of that boost that you need to feel like those runs that didn't exactly work out still moved the needle for you in the right direction. But, at the end of the day, the game is still a challenging one. And so when I got to biome number 2, I was feeling myself. I was popping my collar a little bit. I'm like, okay, this is actually working out pretty well. But, biome 2 was just like, oh, you having a good time, huh? Having a nice old time. Well, guess what? I am going to rip you a brand new asshole. Go ahead. Just go ahead and hand it over to me. I know you got it on you. I know you got it on you. It's crazy, by the way. I don't know where that came from. But biome number 2 is definitely the quote-unquote, the training wheels are off point of the game. And man, I've been getting my ass served to me on a silver platter with nice little garnish, a little bit of avocado toast next to it, some sweet tea, side of lemon. It's been crazy. So I'm not, at this point in my playthrough, I'm not really sure what happened, but I'm like, okay, definitely a difficulty spike. But then something occurred to me. And this is where one of my first big complaints kind of come into play. I'm sitting there thinking, wait a minute. Wasn't there supposed to be some type of modifier feature that was supposed to give me options to make the game easy in some respects? What happened to that? So I start looking around online, and sure enough, yes, there is a Carcosan modifier feature that allows you to sort of toggle on various things, almost like what Halo used to do with the skulls, where you can make things more difficult for yourself if you want more of a challenge, or you can make things significantly easier for yourself, but you always have to keep some sort of balance between those two types of modifiers. Now, the problem is, apparently this modifier feature is supposed to pop for you at some point in the game. I just had no idea when. So I go online, I'm researching it, I go on some forums, I check out Reddit, and a lot more people are asking the same question as me. Where the hell is this feature? Right? Now, part of the reason why I decided to get Saros is because I knew because this feature exists, I can toggle this game down to something easier to where if future biomes are giving me too much of a hard time, I can make life easy for myself, crank things down, and at least be able to finish the game. Right? Because I have nothing to prove. I'm a 41-year-old dad. I don't have time to go out there and test my might. I'm just here to have fun. You know what I'm saying? That's all I want, man. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, so I was like, where the hell is this thing? So what I found out is this feature is unlocking for people kind of at random. So I've heard some people say I died at the first biome 2 times and then it unlocked for me. I hear other people saying I had to wait until I unlocked everything from the progression tree up to a certain point and then die a couple times and then I unlocked it. I've heard some people say it won't unlock until you finish biome number 2. I've even heard some people say that if you play well enough, there's no telling when this modifier feature is going to pop for you because the game might think you're doing so well that you don't actually need it. And so for me, I'm kind of sitting back going, I need this to pop for me pretty soon. I need it to pop pretty soon, okay? Because I don't want to keep going around and wasting my time on biome number 2. So I will say that I think that confusion is definitely a detriment. I think if you're going to put a feature like that in, and you in your rollout for this game said, we are going to give casuals an opportunity to play this game at a difficulty level that is comfortable for them by giving them options to toggle on and off for themselves, that should not be something that you make your users wait for. If I spent $70 on Saros, right, which I did, and I said to myself, the reason why I want this game is because I can play it at a difficulty level that I find most comfortable for me, and you make me wait for that, I have a problem. You know, so if you ask me, I think Housemarque should be putting out a patch ASAP that unlocks this modifier feature for everybody. Because what I would hate to happen to me is I never get past biome 2 and I never unlock this modifier system. That'd be nuts to me. Because otherwise, to be completely honest with you, and I'm sorry to take so long to get to this point, I think this game is great. I'm having a ball. I'm having a great time with this video game. It is so much fun. It is wildly addicting, way more so than Returnal ever was. I think that the story is more captivating. It might not be the deepest thing in the world. It's probably as deep as an episode of Stargate SG-1 from back in the day, you know, like just in terms of its overall premise and what it's trying to do. It's not poetry. It's not Shakespeare. It's just some kind of sci-fi story with a planet that's very weird and people that are losing their minds in it. And it doesn't need to be super deep in that context because at the end of the day, this is one of those games where gameplay matters first and foremost, and the story is a great garnish, but it's not what necessarily would drive someone to keep going. Certainly not through the frustration of losing and having to start over again. But there are more conveniences, there are more things that you can do in this game that are different from Returnal. Particularly one thing that I actually do like a lot is if you die, you don't have to start at the very first biome if you don't want to. You can actually now choose which one you'd like to start at and teleport there first. Now, obviously, that comes with pros and cons, as I'm sure you'd expect. There's always some type of balance. There's always some type of trade-off, but it really does go a long way, as does getting a chance to come back for a second attempt, kind of like Sekiro. So I love the fact that there's that type of flexibility and that they're just not forcing people to do what they did with Returnal, which is right back to square one you go, man. Like that for me was just not super compelling. So I will say overall, I definitely think that they have a lot left to learn at Housemarque around how to make games like this more approachable and accessible, and not making people have to hunt down or work for difficulty toggles for this type of game. Because again, you marketed it as being available. You never said it was going to be something that we would have to fight through and struggle to get to, because some people might not want to wait that long to unlock some of these options. And I think that's definitely something they need to think about. But as an overall game though, 100% fairly rated. What this game has been getting in terms of review scores and just the general consensus being so glowing and positive, I completely align with that 100%. I agree with it. It's not perfect. It is not going to be one of the greatest PlayStation games of all time by any stretch of the imagination, but I think in terms of what it is, what it improves upon over Returnal, just how fun and addicting it is, and what it will hopefully do sooner than later for me in terms of difficulty options, just makes it one of the better experiences that I think PlayStation has put out this generation. And though it might not be for everyone, especially if Returnal didn't do it for you personally, if you are ever curious about trying it out either now or down the road when it's on sale, I don't think that you're going to hate what you purchase. I think you're going to kind of go, oh, okay, I get it. This makes a lot of sense why people love it so much. But I digress for now. I'm going to keep playing it, put more time into it, and hopefully I can get past that biome number 2 and see what happens after that. I'm sure it's going to get only crazier from there, but we shall see. In the meantime, let's move on to the second topic today, which is about Xbox, of all things. Now, if you're new to the show, we are not this Xbox is dead podcast type of thing. We are not console warriors. I know Pablo's not here to kind of attest to that, but I know I can confidently speak on his behalf because we talked about it many times on the show's history that we don't do the whole, go PlayStation, boo Xbox thing. We root for Xbox, we root for Nintendo. In the end, we want this industry to be healthy, to be thriving, and we want these platform holders to be competitive and be at their very best because it brings out the best in each other. And so, with that being said, Xbox is definitely in a weird position right now, and weird kind of in a good way, but also in a very morbidly curious, how is this going to end up kind of way. And that's thanks in large part to their new leadership, which of course stars one Asha Sharma, who is of course now the new CEO of Xbox, not Microsoft Gaming. With just over 60 days on the job, Asha's already making a splash out here. She is definitely making a lot of changes. She is definitely looking to right a lot of the wrongs from the Phil Spencer regime, which, of course, garnered a lot of controversy, and rightfully so. There was a lot of decisions that were happening under his watch, particularly towards the last couple of years, where it was really devaluing the Xbox brand in a pretty meaningful way. And, of course, with Sarah Bond reportedly creating the This Is an Xbox campaign, which, of course, made things even worse for the brand's image and reputation. It was pretty clear that change was necessary, and change is seemingly exactly what's happening right now under Asha's new leadership. So much so that she actually posted a Xbox Wire post that was called We Are Xbox. And it's a pretty long-winded piece that talks about how different Xbox has always been, the origins of Xbox, and how they have work to do to definitely solve a lot of problems that the brand has been having lately in hopes of kind of getting back to the core essence of what Xbox is, really helping out the fan base who's become more and more frustrated, whether that's the price increases to Game Pass or in consoles, or just the exclusivity factor. And speaking of which, there was a very, very clear-cut decision to reevaluate the approach to exclusivity, saying, quote, "Along the way, we will reevaluate our approach to exclusivity, windowing, and AI, and share more as we learn and decide." Now, this, of course, got people talking, as you would imagine, and we got to talk about it too, because as part of this potential reevaluation of exclusivity, this does have a residual impact on not only Xbox's future, but also PlayStation's ecosystem. So let's unpack it a little bit. And I think where I want to begin with that is talking about something that I think has been sort of parroted and echoed almost too much within a lot of gaming discourse around Xbox right now, which is this notion of you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Meaning that once you let it fly with multi-platform strategies like what Xbox is doing, that there is no going back. And I have always stood vehemently against that. I absolutely think that in this case, you most certainly can put the toothpaste back in the tube. And honestly, dude, if I'm just being practical about it, if I'm just being pragmatic about it, I think that's exactly what Xbox should do. I really do think that Xbox should go ahead and return to exclusivity on some level. Maybe not all the way. Maybe not the way that it used to be. Maybe it's some new version of exclusivity that deals more in maybe delegating certain franchises to other platforms that they know are going to be successful there, a la Call of Duty, of course, but also games like Forza Horizon. Maybe you make franchises like that permanently multi-platform, because I think it makes sense. But when you talk about like the core pillars of what makes Xbox what it is, does Halo need to really be out there on PlayStation and Nintendo? Does Gears of War E-Day need to really come to PlayStation or Nintendo? I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze in that sense, because again, when we talk about brand erosion, I think you look at announcements like those and say, well, that's kind of your problem, right? So I think, and Pablo might disagree on this, but he's not here, so fuck him. But all jokes aside, I think that it does make sense to Asha Sharma's point, reevaluate, because exclusivity does make the world go around. I mean, you look at PlayStation. They just got done pivoting away from bringing their games to PC. Not because they can't, but because they believe that it is more valuable to redirect people directly to PlayStation instead of trying to spread it out further and cast a wider net and risk kind of losing people at your core, which is console. And so it wouldn't surprise me at all if that is something that Xbox evaluates and ultimately decides to do too. And I will go as far as to say I think that is what we're going to start hearing about as early as the Xbox Summer Game Showcase. It is my belief that Gears of War E-Day is not going to come to PlayStation. It was never officially announced for PlayStation, and I think that because the Xbox community's outcry of wanting exclusives again is so loud and so undeniable that that game will be among the first that will come back to being Xbox exclusives again. And I wouldn't have a problem with it at all. As much as I would love to have this all-in-one console that gives me the best of both worlds, from PlayStation exclusives to Xbox titles, I think the reality of the situation is that we can all agree Microsoft's previous strategy under the Phil Spencer regime of just blowing the hinges off, tearing down the walled garden, did more harm than good. And you look at a company like Nintendo, who has always stood firm in exclusivity, that you're never going to see Mario on any other platform other than a Nintendo, and you have to look at that and go, that's what made sense all along. And even PlayStation came around on that, which is why they did the PC pivot. But ultimately, I think that Xbox is heading in the right direction. And I don't think that that should be so taboo to say from the PlayStation community. I know that there's a lot of PlayStation fans out there who, unfortunately are of the fanboy ilk, who actively root for the failure of Xbox for no other reason than just to be able to say on Twitter that PlayStation won and Xbox died. I'm not that way. I know Pablo's not that way, my co-host of the show. And we both believe that, again, competition is key to all of this in the gaming industry being healthy. And so I never want to see any one of the big three go down the way that a lot of people do on the internet. So to me, I think ultimately PlayStation will be fine without having Xbox titles come to the platform more frequently. But again, I expect to still see the Forzas of the world continue to come to the platform. Call of Duty's not going anywhere. I wouldn't be surprised if we see other games in the future, particularly live service titles that maybe in the works at Xbox, start coming to other platforms, like what they did with Grounded and Grounded 2, Sea of Thieves. I expect to see a sequel to Sea of Thieves pretty soon here, especially since they don't have Everwild in development anymore, so you have nothing else to do. You might as well make a sequel. So I think things like that will probably innately be best served on a multi-platform level, but I definitely think they need to reevaluate how to bring more of a lucrative feel back to Xbox again, and it's not going to happen overnight. The public perception of the brand is definitely in a very tattered space, but it can get better in time. It just takes step-by-step incremental improvements and updates. And to give credit where credit's due, that's exactly what Asha Sharma has been doing so far during her very short tenure so far. These little quality of life updates to the Xbox Series X and S, new logo, a new mission for the brand, and of course what they're talking about with reevaluating various aspects of their business, including exclusivity, I think all points to Xbox looking to be aggressive again, looking to compete again. And even though they may never be number one and always relegated to number three, just because the juggernaut that is Nintendo and of course the market leader that is PlayStation will probably never be dethroned at this stage of the game, you can still be a very competitive and very dangerous number three. And so, that's kind of where my perspective is on it. And as far as how I think Sony should respond, I think, look, if you end up not having as many Xbox titles on the platform, you just figure out how to pivot. And I think the best way to do that is to make sure that your own first-party roadmap is in a good place. That has been a point of contention for a long time, almost too long at this point. I think getting a good feel for what they need to do from a first-party standpoint to address the live service conundrum, number one, and of course make more single-player games that really drive people to come and stay on the platform is a big deal too. And I guess just continuing to work out third-party exclusivity with titles like they're doing with Silent Hill Townfall, things they've done in the past with the Final Fantasy VII remakes, which we'll talk about in a little bit here. Maybe things like that are going to continue to be a good option for PlayStation, just to continue to fill in those gaps in between first-party releases to keep you compelled to come to PlayStation for games that you can't play anywhere else. Maybe that's the move. I don't know. But I think everyone's going to be fine. I don't think the sky is falling, and I don't think there's anything wrong with Xbox doubling back on any of the decisions they've made in the last few years to compete better. I'm wishing them the best. Me and my daughter both love Xbox very much. It's her favorite platform. She's about 7.5 years old. Every time she's with me, it's all about Xbox. And so naturally, because of that, the platform definitely has a special place in my heart. And as just somebody who loves the gaming industry and has a lot of history with all three of the big three, I really just love the idea of seeing these brands be healthy, thriving, and successful in their own ways and in their own lanes. And so we'll just see what happens. But, that's where I'm at with that. But let's go ahead and move on to the third and final topic this week, which is talking about a game we just alluded to a second ago, which is the Final Fantasy Remake trilogy. Because apparently, Part 3 is so far along that it is able to be completed as currently constructed right now. So, first and foremost, my God. The way that they're working so hard to get that game to the finish line and how efficiently they're getting it done is really one of the most impressive things I've seen on the gaming side in the last couple of years. Their output is right up there with the Insomniacs of the world, and just in terms of that turn and burn type of quality output, they are absolutely on a different level over there. And so if you're a Final Fantasy fan, you've got to be over the moon right now hearing about all this. But let's unpack it a little bit. Let's talk about expectations for Final Fantasy Remake Part 3. For those of you who have played it, you definitely know that they are taking a lot of liberties with the story and taking some things in different directions, or maybe even obscuring some of the things that made the original story a little bit more straightforward. And so that's definitely got a lot of people talking about just making sure that this third and final act of this trilogy really sticks to landing. And I have a couple of things that I wanted to point out as the key things I think this third game needs to do just that. And I think it starts with what I just talked about a second ago, which is not overcomplicating this story. Rebirth introduced a lot of hootenanny. Okay? And first of all, I know hootenanny's an old word. I like hootenanny. Okay, so I'm wiping the dust and debris off this word. I'm claiming it. It's mine. Y'all can't have it. You didn't want it before. You can't have it now. Okay, hootenanny. Lot of it in Rebirth. And to be honest with you, not all of it was bad, but I think when you start getting into the multiverse thing and you add in layers of complexity that don't really need to be there and don't add a lot to the bottom line of that story, it just becomes one of those things like why would you do it at all? You know? So my hope is that they contain that as best they could in this third and final act. I don't want to be sitting here having to chart out 72 different fucking realities where in this one Aerith lives, in this one Zack dies, in this one Cloud this is, and that, like, that is way too much. So I think they're definitely going to need to manage that very carefully, because what already happened with Rebirth was a little bit of fuckery with some of the more pivotal scenes in that game, particularly the Aerith scene itself, which I thought was a complete botch. You can't do more of that again. I get the whole Cloud is the unreliable narrator. I get that he is in a weird headspace because of what's going on with Mako poisoning and all the things that Sephiroth is doing to his mind and things like that. I get all that, but let's not go overboard. Let's not sit here and puzzle the community to the point where we all have to go out there and speculate and watch these YouTube analysis videos where everyone's trying to concoct a theory. I don't need all that. I don't need theory crafting in my Final Fantasy VII. I just need a very heartfelt, very impactful end to what has otherwise been a really, really good trilogy. So that's part of it. I also think, like, don't get cute with the ending and leave it on a cliffhanger for no reason, especially if you're not going to come back to it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't expect there to be a part 4 of this. So let's not pretend like there's going to be. Like, give it a real definitive conclusion, whether it's a happy ending, a bittersweet ending, a sad ending. Just make sure there's a sense of true finality there that really puts the period at the end of the sentence, and I'll be happy. Now, the next thing that I want more Cid, and I damn sure want more Vincent Valentine, okay? I want more Vincent Valentine in my life, okay? Pablo said he'll let him hit it. I'm just letting you know what he said to me, okay? I'm reading the note right now. It's in crayon. It's weird that it's in crayon, but Pablo wrote me a note to tell you guys he would let Vincent Valentine blow his back out with a limit break. Okay, Pablo, all right, I'm not going to read the rest of that. Listen, I love Rebirth for a lot of reasons, but I will say, in all seriousness, that there were times where I felt like it was leaning on the same characters to do the same things. You know, Barrett was still Barretting. I thought that Yuffie, while definitely doing a good job in that comic relief kind of role, at times I think hogged up a little too much attention from what other characters could have done in that period of time. And I did think that it did suppress opportunities for other characters to kind of come in and show a little bit more value in the story. Where it left off with Vincent and Cid was a little weird too, because Cid didn't come across as a character that we'd actually get a chance to play as, which I hope that changes, because I really liked playing as Cid in the original game. But Vincent Valentine. Vincent Valentine is a must-have. I want a lot of time and attention, particularly around his origin story and how he became the character that he is, because I think that's a really, really good story to tell. I was actually a little bummed out that they didn't do some sort of story DLC with him featured, because that would have been awesome. But he's definitely a fan favorite, and I just don't think you can get through a trilogy without giving him the attention that he deserves as a character, because he is in many ways one of the coolest aspects of that game that there is. Probably in some cases toe-to-toe with Sephiroth himself, in just that sheer brooding cool factor. So more of him and more of Cid would be great. And then lastly, I would say that Zack. I go back and forth with him as a character, because it's surreal that we get to see so much of him in this game, but it still feels a little weird in terms of, like, I don't know where he's ultimately going to land in the grander scheme of the overarching story. He's obviously very much alive, and that's great to see, but where does he truly intersect with the core group, with Cloud and company, right? What is that ultimately going to lead to? What is that going to ultimately do to take this story in a different direction? Because they're teasing it, they're hinting it, they're alluding to it, but I just don't know where it goes. So I just want a lot of really good closure for Zack's story arc. I think that his role in the overall Final Fantasy VII lore is incredibly underrated and overlooked. And if this is his opportunity to get more time in front of us, then I want it to be meaningful in the end. I'd hate for him to do all this hustle and bustle and just end up kind of being thrown to the side as an afterthought when it's all said and done. So my hope is that he's able to fully come through to our Final Fantasy VII timeline and, just kind of pick up where the other Zack left off. And let's see what that changes with the story. They kind of alluded to that a little bit with the final boss fight in Rebirth, which I thought was awesome, by the way. But again, the multiverse gobbledygook kind of got in the way of clarity in terms of what his overall role is going to be. So I just need that to start making more sense ASAP. But overall, man, I cannot wait to get my hands on this game. I know Pablo can't wait either. And when we get more information about it in a trailer, hopefully sooner than later, we will definitely be commenting on it when the time comes. But that is going to do it for this week's episode of the PlayStation Effect. Look, it was a solo show. I hope it was entertaining. I try to make it fun. But, of course, in real episodes that we do week over week, every Tuesday, Pablo is with me to talk about PlayStation's past, present, and future with no console warring, no shilling, no nonsense whatsoever. Just good conversations, good laughs, good times. So hopefully you got a good feel for that with me. But definitely subscribe if you're interested in checking out future episodes where we have the total package here. But in the meantime, thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed yourself. Stay safe, save often, and we'll see you next week.